him.
I want to watch the news.
Are you making headway at least?
This is the news.
It's time for the only news that matters. And looking back at Black Sabbath's final album, Gezer Butler said that neither he nor his bandmate Tony Iommi is really happy with producer Rick Rubin. Released in 2013, the album 13, it was the band's first final full-length studio album before calling it a day. Although it features Ozzy Osbourne on vocals, making its first since 1978's Never Say Die, drummer Bill Ward wasn't on it. Nevertheless, they were helped by Rage Against the Machine's Brad Wilk. On the other hand, Gezer feels like producer Rick Rubin wasn't as nearly as helpful as you would think. The bassist recently reflected on the issue during a chat with Brave Words, when reminded of how Sabbath made 5 albums in 3 or 4 years back in the early days. And Gezer said, yeah, that was the way it evolved, I suppose. I think you just lose the spontaneity and the feel of stuff. But when we did the 13 album, that took forever, and some of it was great doing it, and some of it was not too good. But it just didn't have the same feeling like the old 70s album, of course, because Bill Ward wasn't there. Or even Heaven and Hell album, of course, because Bill Ward wasn't there. I love doing Heaven and Hell, but yeah, I think the longer you take over something, it becomes forced in the end. And you sort of lose the initial rawness and the feeling of the music. Then asked whether he thinks there's a chance he'll work again with Rick Rubin, the Sabbath bassist was open about not wanting to ever do that again. He said, nope. He certainly wouldn't work with me ever again. Or Tony. Tony was incredibly disappointed with him. In fact, Tony, took some of the master tapes and redid them. Making an album is far from a simple task, and although Rubin himself isn't a musician, he has a wide variety of successful albums behind him. On the other hand, there are musicians who also openly didn't like Rubin's way of work, and some even openly, were vocal like Gezer. As far as great sounding Black Sabbath albums go, Gezer has his preferences. These are expected choices, although one should bear in mind that the earliest albums he mentioned here were done with Roger Bain, a somewhat obscure producer, awesome producer. I also like the first 3 albums because it's so basic that you can't go wrong with it, he said. We played as a live gig in the studio kind of thing. So there was no ridiculous overdubs and all that kind of stuff. And going more into it, Gezer also added that he also loved what Martin Birch did with them on the 2 Ronnie James Dio fronted albums in the early 80s. He said, I like the first 3, and I like Heaven and Hell and Mob Rules because, like Martin Birch as a producer, I love them, and Sabbath Bloody Sabbath is a good album as well, good production-wise. And as far as Sabbath Bloody Sabbath goes, that one was produced by the band. Yeah, another complaint about the album 13. I don't get it, man. I really don't get how these guys did not, during the recording section, say, look, it's not working out, Rick. We're not going to do this. Just scrap this thing. Because this is horrible. You're making Black Sabbath repeat themselves. I've said it a million times. I'll say it again. The album starts with 2 tracks that are a ripoff of the same song, Black Sabbath. Instead of putting one track as the first track and the second one, track 8 or 9, No, you put them both together. You're listening to two songs that are basically ripping off the song Black Sabbath. Then you have a song on there ripping off Planet Caravan. Another one ripping off NIB, that song Loser. And I don't know, man. It's just a lifeless album. The drums suck. You know, it's like it's losing that Black Sabbath magic. You got pedestrian drums, weak songs, and Ozzy sounding like a robot. Like, you know, it's total Pro Tools. You know how Ozzy's voice has been for years. You know, you combine all that together and it sucks. It spells S-U-C-K-S. Horrible stuff, man. 13 it's just so bad that Black Sabbath ended with such a crappy album. I remember saying, oh, Forbidden, you know, up to Forbidden, I had no problem with any Black Sabbath album. And I didn't really hate Forbidden much. I just felt it wasn't as good as all the albums before it. But then when 13 came out, shit, it made the Forbidden sound like Sabbath Bloody Sabbath. It was so bad, man. And I really wanted to like it. I really did. Even without Bill Ward and everything, I really wanted to like it. But now in retrospect, no, I couldn't get into it. And I tried and tried and tried, man. I liked one of the bonus tracks. That's the only thing I liked about that album. It was actually a bonus track. It wasn't even on the damn album. Now, somebody very, very cool got me that Black Sabbath The End, which were songs that didn't make 13. And I haven't heard that in a long time, but I do remember listening to it back then thinking, oh, it's better than 13. I don't think it blew my mind or anything, but that's an album I never reviewed on this channel, and I should change that. I should do a review of The End and, you know, get re-familiar with it, because as I recall, I did not dislike it. You know, I don't think I mean, obviously it didn't freak me out because I didn't go back and listen to it again. But I remember hearing it that one time thinking, you know, it's an improvement for 13. These songs should have been on the album. But yeah, I got to hear it again, man, and do a thorough review on the album The End. And Rick Rubin, I mean, this guy, I mean, what has he done really lately that's worth anything? I mean, I really don't know because I don't keep up with the guy. But man, did he do some great albums back in the day. That self-titled Trouble album, amazing. And the follow-up, Manic Frustration, whatever it's called, great stuff. And I loved his work with Danzig, with Slayer. You know, it was just, I mean, the earlier Slayer shit he did, like Rain and Blood. And I think he did, yeah, I'm pretty sure he did South of Heaven and Seasons. I dig all that stuff. But then, man, I mean, what the hell? I mean, I have the documentary of the 13 album, and he's laying down on a bed. That's how he produces stuff. He's like laying down like, you know, hey, do something that sounds like Planet Caravan or something like that. And it's not just Rick Rubin. I mean, Black Sabbath. I've heard other people. I think Red Hot Chili Peppers were complaining about him. You know, he really basically doesn't do shit now. You know, he just lays down, throws out a couple suggestions. And I think other people really produce the album more than he does. He's got a name, so I don't know. I don't get it myself. Extremely overrated now, because seriously, man, the guy sucks. I mean, it shows all over 13, and, you know, his whole thing is like, oh, you know, he did the same thing with Metallica, even though I don't think Death Pathetic sounds like classic Metallica. But, you know, he's like telling them, oh, you need to just listen to the early albums. And notice after that album, they never worked with him again. Metallica, the guy that worked with Bob Rock again, you know? And I think Bob Rock did a shitty job on their albums. But then again, I think Bob Rock did a great job on Subhuman Race and Motley 94. I think he did a great job on those albums, but I don't like what he does with Metallica. And obviously Metallica doesn't either, because they stopped working with him, and Black Sabbath will never work with him again. But then again, Black Sabbath, you know, come on. Let's be honest here. Black Sabbath's over. But anyway, what do you all think? Leave it in the comments below, and thank you so much for watching The Only News That Matters. I really do mean that, man. Every one of my videos, whoever watches it, thank you so much. I don't take you for granted. Even if you hate what I do, thank you for watching. And please subscribe to my channel if you haven't. Ring that little notification bell. And like the video. It's good for the YouTube algorithms. So stay frosty. Listen to Black Sabbath. As long as Rick Rubin isn't producing it. And smack 'em a gob.
Farewell and adieu to you fair Spanish ladies. Farewell and adieu, you ladies of Spain. For we've received orders for to sail back to Boston. And so never more shall we see you again.